So I received a voicemail from Betty Butler, whose son is serving 30 years in state prison. This voicemail I got from her was different. I get calls all the time from people asking for help on stories. But her voicemail was so different. The emotion in her voice was strong. It was a desperation plea for help. I immediately called her back and I told her to tell me about her son's story. What was it about her son's story that we should pay attention to? And she began taking me back to the day that she got the call that her son had been arrested for attempted murder. And she needed help telling his story, and she came to us for the help that she needed.
He's not a violent person. Have he been to prison before? Federal prison, yes. Nothing violent. He's not the one. He's the quiet one.
Investigators, though, paint a much different picture of Walter Washington than his mother. They say during the summer of 2014, he started a violent gunfight that left another man paralyzed.
I hear stories like this all the time when people get arrested for these sort of crimes, and everyone says they're innocent.
Yes.
Why should people believe that your son is innocent?
Because my son didn't do the shooting, and the victim came back and clarified that.
The gunfight was triggered by a verbal argument outside of this apartment complex near Washington Shores. In his own words from Madison State Prison, Walter Washington told us what he claims happened next.
I seen both of my stepsons, it's in a little altercation. I said, man, y'all, let's go. So they came and got back in the truck, and we backed up, and as we was driving off, one of my stepsons looking back in the crowd. So he was like, "Whoa, go and shoot me."
It's the same story he told a judge during his first appeal process, alleging he had an ineffective public defender. By then, he had hired a private attorney who told us she's now working the case pro bono.
The whole story from the state's perspective was that Walter Washington came there with a grudge. There was a dispute. He was seen walking around, waving a firearm around, then proceeds to get into his vehicle, and as they're driving away, he proceeds to shoot.
According to transcripts, the victim provided emotional testimony describing how he looked the shooter in the face as he glanced over his shoulder, and that's when Washington shot him in the back, all while driving in reverse to escape that shootout. In this affidavit the victim signed after that first appeal was denied, he now claims that he made up the story after speaking with family members that night at the hospital, one of whom allegedly had a vendetta against Washington. The victim further affirms that some of the people who testified weren't actually at that party.
The only reason that Walter Washington was ever convicted was because several eyewitnesses, every single one of them except for one, was related to the victim, said that it was him.
Detectives testified that although several dozen people were at the party, no one cooperated with the investigation. The gun was never found and the paralyzing bullet was never recovered. Investigators said they did recover a single shell casing in the back of Washington's truck that matched one of 4 different types of gun casings found near the victim's body.
Like a gun was never shot out of the vehicle, so how did you find a 40 casing in the back seat? I don't know if that was put there, Ms. Jones. I ain't no telling because the car was because the truck was at the tow place for about 2 days just before they released it. And, I'm the driver.
In addition to this second appeal, his attorney has also filed for relief through the state's Attorney Conviction Integrity Unit, which was spearheaded by State Attorney Monique Worrell prior to her taking over the office.
The purpose of conviction integrity is to address the fact that our system is fallible. We are all human beings, and human beings err by nature. And to ignore that puts us in a very dangerous situation where we have individuals who serve decades in prison for crimes that they didn't commit.
We did not speak specifically about Washington's case because his attorney has applied for review, but the head of the unit explained how their process works.
What factors are you looking for to determine whether or not their case should be overturned?
We pull all of the records, including trial records, sentencing records. We do a very thorough search because we find that sometimes someone may be pointing at one thing that could help prove their innocence, and in fact there are other things that we may find that do in fact point to an issue with the case.
There's a long queue before Washington's case would get any consideration. Many cases stacked in boxes in her office are already under review.
My son told me when he got them 30 years, he said, Mom, please don't let me die in prison. And I'm going to honor his word. I'm bringing my baby home because he's innocent.
Vanessa Eccles here. Thanks for watching Channel 9 on YouTube. To get the latest news, check out WFTV.com. And don't forget to download the WFTV News app.